Do you know how much was spent on the construction of World Trade Center? How a person from France pulled out a stunt on Twin Towers and leave the world to wonder. Many people have been fascinated by the story of the Twin Towers for decades. Throughout their history, they have been world's tallest buildings until being destroyed in 9/11 attacks. Let's jump into the top 10 interesting facts about Twin Towers, also known as World Trade Center, located in Lower Manhattan, New York. Number 1. The high-wire walk between the towers of the World Trade Center made the news in Philippe Petit's case. Before staging a show in New York, Philippe Petit began making headlines as a madcap by performing a high-wire walk between the towers of Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris in 1971. His next high-wire walk was 3 years after the Twin Towers were completed, making him the talk of the town once again. It was a much higher walk for him to cross the Twin Towers, since he was over 1,312 feet above ground. As opposed to this, he traversed 226 feet of height on the towers of Notre Dame Cathedral. Number 2. The names of the towers were quite obvious, the North Tower and the South Tower. It appeared the names of these towers were not very creative, like those of many buildings. As well as being known as the North Tower and South Tower, they were officially named One World Trade Center and Two World Trade Center. Until the Sears Tower's construction later in 1973, their 110 stories were unmatched by any other building in the world. Number 3. A total of $900 million was spent on the construction of the Twin Towers. This is approximately $5 billion today when we take inflation into account, illustrating the time and expenses it took to build the towers. It had been estimated that the tower construction would cost around $350 million by the Port Authority. It was anticipated that the final cost would come to $750 million, but it exceeded both estimates by a considerable margin. Number 4. There was a time when they stood tall among the world's tallest buildings. The Twin Towers were once the tallest buildings in the world when they were completed. Despite the widely held belief that they were identical, the towers actually differed slightly in shape, although this difference may not have been apparent from the ground. There was a 6 feet difference between the height of the North Tower and that of the South Tower. North Tower was 6 feet taller than that of the South Tower. Located in New York City's financial district, with their heights of 1,368 feet and 1,362 feet, both buildings were taller than both their neighbors, the Empire State Building and the Eiffel Tower located in Paris. There were 110 stories in both towers and each measured more than 43,056 square feet in area. Number 5. A famous restaurant used to be located in the North Tower. Adding a restaurant in the North Tower was part of the Port Authority's effort to boost tourism and make the towers more attractive. Restaurant located on the 106th and 107th floors of the Twin Towers, named Windows of the World, offered panoramic views of the city. A view of the famous Manhattan skyline was one of the attractions of this hotel when it opened in April 1976. Following the first bombing in 1993, the restaurant suffered extensive damage that needed to be repaired, thanks to an investment of $25 million. Number 6. The South Tower controlled the top floor of the North Tower. There was an operation control center, located in the basement of the South Tower, which controlled the access to the top floor of the North Tower. New York City broadcasting facilities for radio and TV were located on the topmost floor of the North Tower. Number 7. You might have not known the fact that the towers have been exposed to robberies, fires, and bombings in the near past.
The Twin Towers survived terrorist attack almost a decade before the September 11, 2001 attack.
There were more than 1,000 people injured and 6 people killed in 1993 when a bomb went off in the World Trade Center's parking lot. Another incident was reported when several floors of the North Tower were burned after a fire broke out in 1975, shortly after the Twin Towers were completed. Most of the damage was sustained on the 11th floor, where the fire had broken out. Another state of emergency was reported when robbers stole $1.6 million from the Bank of America, which was housed within the North Tower. In 1998, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey made the decision to privatize the whole World Trade Center. Number 8. In the spring of 1977, George Willig climbed the exterior of the South Tower in New York City to reach the top and complete the climb in less than 4 hours. Upon reaching the top, he was arrested by the police because the authorities were not pleased with him. The stunt received substantial media attention in the weeks that followed, with crowds cheering Willig on the ground. As a result of the inconvenience, he was initially informed that he would have to pay a fine of $250,000. At the end of it all, his final payment was only $1.10, a cent for every story he climbed. In the media and among fans, he was referred to as the human fly after his stunt. Number 9. After the destruction of the Twin Towers in 2001, the design of the buildings came under intense scrutiny. In the years prior to the construction of the Twin Towers, Bangladeshi-American structural engineer, Fazlur Rahman Khan, proposed this design. Using the concept of a tube within a tube, his design strengthened the perimeter of the building and allowed open-plan floors to be enjoyed by all those inside. Columns were not used in the building design, which made it a more spacious and flexible structure. Number 10. 1968 marked the beginning of the construction of the North Tower, followed by 1969 for the South Tower. Tenants began moving in by 1970, and the office space was rented out. Along with 4 other World Trade Center buildings, these buildings were completed by 1973. 7 World Trade Center, the final building, was completed in 1987.